Hello, this is Mark McCrew with Minc Oil Company. This is showing the installation of the tanks on our first well.
Jesus, it is a convoy. Wow.
This is the load of equipment coming in. These are tanks that have to come in. We have 3 semi trucks, and each one of those trucks has a pickup truck as a oversized load guide to bring the tanks here from Andrews, Texas, which is about 45 miles away. Ron was at the tank facilities this morning at 5:30 in the morning with the crews loading up the tanks, getting everything ready for the travel from Andrews up to our wells here. So like I said, we've got 3 semis with tanks on them, 3 guide trucks for oversized load. We've got 1 pickup truck and a trailer with a backhoe, 1 pickup truck and a trailer with a bobcat, 1 pickup truck and a trailer with the stairs and catwalk that will get bolted onto these tanks. And we have some miscellaneous other pickup trucks running around. These are the first tanks coming in.
Whoa, look at them.
You might have seen when they first came into the screen, they were coming from the right going to the left, and now they're coming from the left going into the right. What they had, at that curve they came around, they had to make a U-turn to get into this property here. So these are the first tanks. These tanks are about $10,000 a piece, these 2. The ones behind them also about $10,000 a piece. So that's $20,000 that just went by. And these 2 tanks. These tanks are 16 feet high and 16 feet across. They will hold 500 barrels of fluids. There's a lot of water in this oil out here. There goes another $20,000 worth of tanks. There's a lot of water in the oil out here, and you need to separate that water from the oil. So that's what these 2 tanks are here. And these are both about $40,000 a piece. Now these tanks, all of them are refurbished. These are not brand new. If they were brand new, the big tanks that we're paying $10,000 for it would be about $50,000. These tanks here are about $40,000 a piece. It would be more like $120,000 if we bought them new. But everybody's getting into position now. The backhoe is taken off to get into position. Everybody else is lining up. We got the first truck in. Oh, also amongst the equipment we had a crane. This is Ron. Ron is on the left in the tan jacket, and he's talking to the crew. Basically what happened here is they didn't want to do things the way he wanted to do them. So Ron had a little temper tantrum, as he calls it, and explained to them the facts of life, that they either do it his way or pack their stuff up and go home and refund the money. So they ended up doing things Ron's way. This is a very complicated business. It's a very expensive business. It's a very dangerous business. It's also a business that's full of a lot of very strong-willed people, very set in their ways. You might call them opinionated or whatever, but they do things the way they do them. And sometimes you do butt heads, and it's not pretty. But as long as you can part as friends, it's okay. But everybody worked together real good this day on this crew. So we've got about $10,000 for each one of these tanks that you're looking at there, and $40,000 for each of the other tanks that you'll be seeing those go in shortly. And then you have to pay for the installation of these things, which is about $1,000 a piece. And we have a crane there to lift the tanks. So there's quite a bit of equipment and quite a bit of manpower on site to do this. This is not just dropping some tanks in the ground and going home. They've got to be laid down exactly where Ron has the ground marked. That's a gravel pad right there to the left of the truck, and those tanks are going to go on that gravel pad. And they've got to go exactly where Ron marked them. They've got to be lined up exactly, even. They've got to be level, and they've got to be plumb. If that tank right there is leaning 2 inches, it's a problem. Watch that. Watch that. Watch the top. Blink. The fitting that cable was attached to broke loose from the tank. First I thought it was the hooks from the crane had broken loose, but it wasn't. It was actually the fitting that he was hooked onto. We're just lucky that tank was 10 inches off the ground and not 10 feet off the ground when it fell. And this is the second tank going in. This job went on from about, these guys all got onto the site about noon, and it wasn't until 7 o'clock. It was well past dark. It was about 7 o'clock by the time Rebecca finished and pulled off the site. These tanks, they're, like I say, they're refurbished tanks. They're good. There's nothing wrong with them. And once we get them set in place, this tank here that's hanging right there, that has not been painted yet. So we're going to have a sandblaster. Our guy's going to come over and sandblast all the old paint and rust and stuff off of it, and then prime it and paint it. And he wanted to do it on the job site rather than in the warehouse, in the shop where he was, because this way he can paint that tank and all the catwalks and the ladders all at the same time, and do whatever touch-ups are needed on the other tanks. So he'll be coming out probably next week to do that. These two tanks here, the tank number 1 and tank number 2, those tanks are to contain the water that comes out of the oil. An enormous amount of water is in this oil. Something like 95% of the fluid that comes out of the ground is water. So we've got to separate the water from the oil, and then that water goes into those first 2 tanks. And then from there, it will flow underground through a pipeline about 400 yards away to the water disposal facility, and will get pumped down deep under the earth. And then the second 2 tanks that you don't see loaded yet, unloaded, the second 2 tanks will contain the actual oil. There's only one problem I saw on this job all day long, and I'll go over that later. You'll hear me talking to Becky about it. And maybe you'll see the problem too as we go on. Most of these guys doing the work there, the guy in the red hood there, the red hoodie, these other guys walk around, most of these guys are Mexicans. They're from Mexico. They do this work, and they're real good at it. A lot of the oil field workers in the Permian Basin are Mexican, and a lot of them are illegal aliens. But they're working, they're producing, they obey the rules. When you drive around the Permian Basin, by far most of the cars are and trucks are very respectful. They drive very good. They respect all the rules and laws of the road. They watch out for you. So I think everybody in the Permian Basin, when they hire these Mexican guys, they put them through a thorough training course to learn the rules of the road here in this country and make sure they obey them. will say from personal experience they drive a heck of a lot nicer in Midland, in the Permian Basin area, than they do in El Paso or in Denver, or a lot of places for that matter. Midland, Texas, the Permian Basin area, it's a pretty easy area to get around because of the way people drive. They drive polite and respectful. It's not a, what would you say? It's not a road rage type of town like El Paso is, where everybody thinks they're playing bumper cars at the amusement park. Well, this is part one of the video. This will be over shortly in about a minute, and then we'll get into part two. We'll show you that. And this is a series of videos we're making so that you can see every phase of the operation as we reopen this oil well. The last video you should have seen us pulling out the pipes and the old pump from the well. This is the next step, putting in these tanks. If we put the tanks in, they've got to be all hooked up with all kinds of pipes and valves and fittings and things. Ron will be doing that next week or so. Then we need to work on electricity. Then we need to get a new pump and new pipe to put down in the well. And then we can fire it up. So we're about 3/4 of the way done. But I hope you enjoy the videos. It's the best quality I can master. And we mean that. Thank you very much.